Going live again here with American Zarathustra. We're going to be looking at the critique of White Art Collective by Apollonian Germ. Had some technical difficulties with the last one, so starting over to do it right this time. My apologies. I hope you guys can join me again in the chat. I have to make this a nice clean production so that it can just sort of, exist as like a document on my YouTube. So let's go do a little screen share here, and then we'll get into this. One more time, I am only representing my own views on this. I'm not officially representing the White Art Collective. That was started by Jeff Winston, and he's the only official voice for making statements on the White Art Collective. So this is exclusively Donald Kent and my points of view on this. So I invite critique. All of us in the White Art Collective invite critique. And it's important that we have this in our sphere. But as always, it's something that it needs to be done from a position of good faith, done sort of not maliciously, but constructively, right? Constructive criticism. I would say Apollonian Germ is our guy. He's at least in our sphere. There are many different points of view in our sphere. You've got Christians, Apollonians, pagans, what have you, so, but all of us are trying to save Western civilization. So from that perspective, I would say he's in our sphere. He was on Millennial with Millennial Woes a couple months ago when, in Christmas time. I've commented on this video on his channel, and I've invited him on American Zarathustra. I like his content. I've been following him for at least a year or more. And he's very bright, very eloquent in the way he speaks. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, but I do think that we have to separate our taste in arts and music from the ability to critique it. And then what's more is doing research on the work that you're critiquing. Not everybody can give an educated opinion about things. So everyone can give an opinion, and that's fair enough. But, we have to weigh all of those factors in. So that is sort of the condensed version of what I wanted to say. Again, I'm approaching this very constructively. I would love to have Apollonian Germ on my show. I recommend that people subscribe to his channel, and everything that I say in this broadcast is only representing my opinions, my points of view. So quick background. I am an art teacher. I've been teaching for about 20 years, and art critique is an extremely important aspect of arts, the arts, learning arts, appreciating arts. If you're going to say, I don't know, let's say you're going to see an opera, then maybe you should learn what's the story of the opera, in English. And then when you go listen to the opera, you'll appreciate it more. Or if you're going to see an exhibit of, Impressionist painting or something like that, you should learn the lives and the times and the context of the art so that you understand what it is they were trying to do. And you can have an educated opinion on those things. So these are just a few things. Now, another important concept to understand approaching the topic of art critique is that artists are unique in that we're evolving. We're not like, let's say you want to get a job, you have to learn a skill. And once you've got the skill and the certification, you get the job. Black and white, 1 + 1 is 2. Well, in art, you're constantly growing and evolving. So, my work last year is not as good as it is this year, or 10 years ago versus now. So we're very vulnerable in the sense that we're putting our emotions, our thoughts, feelings, perspectives, philosophies out there. And then when people criticize them harshly, it's quite painful. So naturally, artists are going to have a pretty bad reaction to that. However, if it's critiqued in good faith and in a way that is meant like, okay, try to work on your rhythm and your timing, or, maybe check your poetry with somebody before you publish it, just for, to kind of get some different opinions about things, and you could improve here or there. That's fine. That's all natural and good. So let's just go into this discussion with these understandings. And so I'm really, really, really going to need people in the chat to make sure that the audio is working this time. Actually, I'm so happy you're here. If you could help me out, you guys let me know for sure that you can hear me. I'll just make sure. I'm sorry for the delay. And you guys should be fine. Everything should be fine. I see that my little icon is jittering as I talk, so it appears to be okay. So I am going to, your audio is a bit low. I'm not, okay, let's see if I can, I hate to have to do technical stuff right in the middle of a broadcast. I think probably in settings, maybe my audio could be turned up. If I knew how to do that, that would be even cooler. Default, no, echo. Oh, that was a little much. So I'll speak louder perhaps, or closer to maybe I'll speak closer. I do have kind of a mellow voice. Anyway, let's get into this. I'm going to make sure that, I tell you what, I will double check the audio on his video one more time. Thanks for your patience. Maybe in the chat you can share some of your thoughts. Have you guys seen his video? There's a lot of discussion going on about it. And naturally, again, artists can be pretty sensitive and hurt by these kinds of things. So it's a rough show when that happens. At the same time, you, as an artist, in some regard, you kind of have to toughen up. If you're putting your art out there in the world, then people are going to critique it. I would say that every work of art that you do is kind of like your child, and then it goes to school and it graduates and it moves out and it lives its own life. And so when you're making art, you have to try to form it as best you can with the greatest ability you have at the time, And I'll also add that something kind of cool that I learned in art school is that, one of my professors said that you only paint one painting in your life. You just do it across many canvases. And I thought, that's I don't know if he invented that phrase, because it sounds really, like something you'd see on like a meme or something. But it's very true. It's totally true. Every song you write, is really just part of your whole songwriting career, if you will. If you look at any of the bands that you like and you listen to, you can tell, like, say, this band was good earlier in their career, and then they kind of changed at a certain point, and maybe I like the early stuff, but I don't like the later stuff, something. All those all those aspects are they play into it. So let's look at Apollonian Germ's video, and then we'll do a discussion on that. And I'm going to get started in just a second here. I have to open up his YouTube, and there's one thing that's called the audio share, and if you do not have the audio share on, then you can't do it. And so let's give it another shot. So has anybody seen has anybody seen his critique? Has anybody heard about it or gone online? I did post it, I think, yesterday. And so I think it's just kind of a topical thing. Of course, everybody in the White Art Collective is talking about it privately amongst ourselves. And, naturally, we all have our own perspectives on it. But again, we've been dealing with these topics of art versus politics for a long time, pretty much since the beginning. when we got into this venture, if you will, we all knew, like, it's very challenging to make art about art and music. When I say art, I mean all art. So just let's clarify that. But it's very hard to make our arts in a way that is is not cringy, or is powerful and meaningful. There's a lot of people in our sphere that are phenomenal at that. I would say, like, Hyrith, Olivia Key, Nullis, Jeff Winston, Jack White. I mean, wow, we have some, gargantuan artists among us in the Wet Art Collective. So they're very, very powerful, and they're getting better and better and better at communicating our mission, to save Western civilization, to preserve the West, to enlighten people to white genocide and all these kind of things. Now, one of the topics that comes up with Apollonian Germ is something that I notice in a lot of people, because I've interviewed so many people, right, on Imperium Art, and that is this kind of sort of an aversion to talking about being white explicitly. This, especially in the arts. So, we're going to cross that path when we get to it here. Let me, I think I'm ready to roll here. Not 100% sure where I am in his video. Anyway, I will be pausing his video intermittently and then commenting case by case. I have not written anything. I'm just going totally off the cuff here. And one more time, this is solely my point of view. I'm not representing the White Art Collective in doing this. So guys in the chat, this is your job now. Please help me out. Make sure the sound is coming across, and away we go.
Hello, my friends. How are you all doing today? Hope you're doing well. Today, I am going to be discussing aesthetics, what I consider to be bad art, what I think is bad art in the online spheres of the sort of alt-right, dissident right, nationalist political circles online. And I'm going to tell you why I think their art is bad. I think I'm going to be talking specifically about music in this case, but a general conversation on art is warranted to get you guys to understand where I'm coming from. Before I go any further, though, can we do a mic check and volume check and everything else? Is everything good? I know I'm going to be getting transparent holes in my head because I'm using the green screen. Not much dead air here. Anyway, I'm not really an artist. I'm more of I've tried my hand at art. I've tried my hand at poetry. Painted, drawn things. Most of what I've done is written poetry, and the last video I did is something, the Better Times for Our People video, something that I tried to make artistic, but really I know I'm sort of a dilettante when it comes to these sorts of things. I don't really dedicate myself or my time to artwork, but that doesn't mean I don't have opinions. I have very strong opinions about art and aesthetics, and I've written about these opinions. And I think something that's really important in any artistic movement.
Okay, so I have figured this out. I've got him on pause. I am unmuted, so you don't have any echo. And I just want to recognize that he made a really important disclaimer there. We're gonna, I'm responding quickly to Hyrith. Constructive criticism, and as I said earlier when we started, there's a big difference between criticizing and constructive criticism, which is why I kind of went into, as an art teacher, I teach art criticism. You have to have blah, 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 blah. We're going to come across all that stuff for sure. I was really really kicked in the chest with his comments on Hyrith, because I adore her and her music, and so like that's really like the worst of his video. But let's just parse this out here. So I wanted to first say, let's recognize that he made a kind of a disclaimer, and that I feel like he has an artist wanting to come out of him, but maybe the philosopher is stopping that. It would have been so much better had he just come to the White Art Collective and said, "Hey guys, I'm an aspiring poet, singer, songwriter. Would you take me in?" And we would have said, "Hell yeah, come on in. Let's cultivate this. We're all growing. We're all evolving." That would have been, I think, a better approach, rather than to kind of et cetera, et cetera. So, but once again, I'm only representing my opinions and views on this. So let's continue.
In any sort of artistic community, there has to be criticism. There has to be rivalry. There has to be competition and serious criticism. And I think that there is a certain artistic community that has come up. They're called the White Art Collective. And I'm going to be criticizing them in this video. And I think, just to begin, one of the main problems with something like this White Art Collective is that they're creating art and music in particular that is really, it's meant to promote a political agenda. It's meant to, it's at the root of it, and this is something that they said in an interview. At the root of it, what they're doing is trying to awaken white people to white genocide. They're trying to promote white identity and pride in white identity. And they have these political motives to them that, in my opinion, once you define yourself as an artistic movement by certain political stances, it becomes very difficult for people to criticize you. Because in criticizing you, and in criticizing your art, and saying, look, you're making bad music, you're making bad art, I don't like it, people will take that, the fans of this will take that, and respond by saying, oh, well, you're just an anti-white, aren't you? Or, oh, you're just a hater. So,
okay, so a lot to respond to. Sorry if there was an echo there. Okay, so in his words, he is criticizing, not critiquing. So I'm assuming he understands the difference. I do, how do I say? I do agree with the fact that there should be rigorous critique. I'm not so sure about like this should be playful competition, but not like aggressive competition. I mean, that's okay if there is. I would say that, that can stimulate a lot of creative growth. So, but in general, we're a very self-supporting community. You have to try to look at it, the world is trying to kill us, right? They're trying to crush us, censor us, demoralize us, et cetera, et cetera. And in spite of all that, we've come together to create light, joy, inspiration, all these kinds of arts that are helping to moralize and transform and empower us. Okay, so there's that. And then on another topic about politics and art, how many times have you heard about, say, like, Black political art or Black political music, or even Native American political art or music, or, or LGBT political art or music? Why is it like they can do that, but we can't? like there's this weird aversion to whites taking up their demographic torch, if you will, and saying, we are a people, we have rights, we have a destiny, we have, a goal. We're legitimate as a movement, as et cetera, et cetera. So it's evolving, right? It's evolving. There's no manifesto. We don't all live in the same town. Who can afford that? I mean, that's a weird. We're not living in New York in the 1950s or in Paris in the 1930s or who knows what. It's just not the way the world is anymore. So I just feel like there's a kind of I don't know what to call it, but he's just against that idea. And so straight away, I feel like that's a problem for me, because I feel like, yes, we can stand up. And I think his perspective is that you shouldn't make art about white identity politics. You should just make art that somehow communicates, say, like, folk music communicates the story of, in my village in Ireland, we milk the cows and then we go to work. It's like, no, that's not about what we're dealing with. That is folk art, and I love it, and it's beautiful, and it has its place. But we're making art that, to some degree or other, has some political resonance to it. We're explicitly, bravely, unapologetically standing up and saying, we're white artists making art about being white in the age of white genocide. And that's what we're doing. And so I just have to throw that out there. I think that helps to broaden the context of the discussion. So let's continue.
So it kind of creates a bubble around the artwork that says, if you don't like this music, if you don't like this art, then you're against the political agenda. You're against these values. You're against this. You're against white identity, because we're just trying to promote white identity. So if you're against this, then you must be against white identity. And I think that.
So again, I would say this is a presumption. I don't think that, how can I say, there's reason to believe what he believes. I think that it's a fair critique that, maybe that's his problem right off the bat, is that he feels like, I can't critique this, or because then I'm the bad guy. I'll tell you, there's all kinds of artwork that is beautiful, aesthetically enriching, and wonderful, et cetera, by artists that are evil or Marxist, or Caravaggio was one of the worst people in human history, and his paintings are exquisite, right? So the art and the people are different, right? You have to kind of separate that, and that goes back to what I was saying about a work of art has a life of its own. So I think it's important to recognize this, and I will say that as artists, our knee-jerk instinct is to kind of fight, and I think that if we can kind of zen out a little bit and listen, reflect, and then think before we respond, that is probably healthier for us. We don't sort of like, he's not our audience per se. Your audience is critical. Like, who is our audience? We are playing to our audience. And speaking for myself, my audience is everybody in the white positive sphere. So these are the warriors of our culture, of the culture war, and they need anthems. They need banners. They need songs they can shout to. They need songs they can cry to. Our music and our culture, my art, etc., is to bring this community together as a family in a wholesome way. Is my music good? Is my art okay? Here and there, it's up and down. I'm my own worst critic. I can tell you what's wrong with my painting. I could tell you what I don't like about my songs. And you can tell me what you don't like about my paintings and my songs, for example. So let's kind of air it out a little bit and look at it from that perspective. So audience is critical as well. So let's go back to my man, the Germ.
That's completely wrong. I think that's that sort of political agenda to it that creates this bubble is what stifles the harsh criticism that has to be given to them. And, you know, when you look into history, I had a page here. Where is it? When you look into history, the greatest moments of artistic production. Let me see. The greatest moments, I think, in artistic production throughout history have been moments when you have groups of artists that are living in the same area, oftentimes even in the same city, oftentimes working in the same studios, that are going at each other's throats, trying to one up each other. One of the most famous instances of this was Michelangelo and Raphael, but there's tons of other examples. There's I think Bernini and Boronini. Here it says Van Gogh and Gauguin, Caravaggio and Giovanni, Ingres and Delacroix. Like the most optimal situation, I'd say, for the creation of art is a situation where you have intense rivalries among artists, where each of them is trying to one up the other at the other's expense. They're trying to show that their art is better than the other artists. And because look, there's a meme, I think, in our culture today that says we don't need to compete. We just need to cooperate. And that anything that could be done through competition could be done just as good if we're all just cooperating with each other. But I see it as, you know, motivation is like this engine in your soul. And the engine has multiple thrusters. And some of those thrusters are ignited by cooperation. Some of those thrusters are ignited by competition. And when you're competing, you're necessarily cooperating with other people. There's always the cooperative element. But when you compete, you get the widest range of motivational inspiration that could possibly be given to you. It opens up new motivating avenues in your soul, essentially, that push you to higher heights, that push you to do better and better. And if you don't have somebody out there who is going to, you know, pick out each and every one of the little mistakes that you make, of the little problems in your creations, then you're not going to do as well. You're not going to be pushed to do as well. And that, I think, is a problem. We need that. We can't have a hug box, essentially, where just because somebody's making art that is supposed to promote European culture and promote white identity, that we can't criticize it. It has to be attacked if it deserves an attack. That Mr. A says, I think the most important focus in any Eurocentric art collective should be the art itself, not politics, because the principles of art itself are based. I agree.
Okay, a little bit of a response there. First of all, I'm seeing fantastic comments in the chat, especially Nullis. Nullis has, the dude is always on point. He makes some brilliant points. There's so much to say and so many people to comment on this. So it really would have been better to have like a panel discussion. I think that would have been fantastic. I'm just one guy. I have my own, you know, perspective, but there's a great many brilliant artists in the White Art Collective that have quite a lot to contribute to this whole vision. So I'm hearing his sentiment about like not having a quote hug box. And it's true. There, you shouldn't be overly like, oh, I love everything you do, and let's just pat each other on the back and be soft and nice and stuff. But there's a difference between supporting somebody and I don't know how to say that. Like, it's we are supportive of each other, and we should be, and that's healthy and good. What we're doing is a lot harder than really what maybe any artist is doing. You know, we're in some ways endangering ourselves by doing what we're doing. So it takes so much more courage to do what we do than any other kind of art or artist in the world. I would say. We don't get any kind of money or recognition. You know, we're doing this for our cause, for our people. And the notion, again, repeating, like, you know, like the idea that we all have to live in the same city and work in the same studios it's just a bit much. I mean, in history that was true, but you know, we don't live in the past. We're living in the internet age, and our problems and our issues and our culture are global. They're global, and so the internet is our studio. It is our city, if you will. So to say like it has to be this way is a bit much, right? It doesn't have to be that way. We have all kinds of chat rooms and this, that, and the other thing to, you know, and there's constant and rigorous discussion going on in these chat rooms. So, and I don't blame him for not knowing that, right? I mean, I guess he's maybe, I feel like he's sort of a newcomer. I don't feel like he's really dug deep into our culture, our music, arts, programming. And, you know, what I'll say is there's something for everybody. You've got techno music and folk music. You know, you've got hard rock, you've got classical. You know, we have musicians that don't have any words in there. You know, Sebastian Vilmark plays viola, and he plays it angrily and heroically. And when you see his videos, and it has a kind of a pagan flavor to it. So it has a place in our sphere. So we're not really a quote movement or quote school. Movement is wrong. I think we are a movement. But we're not a school of art. So like the Impressionists or the Surrealists or the abstract expressionists, those are movements, right? Or they're movements and schools, right? Because you'd have to belong to the ideology of that art, right? And oftentimes they have patrons, they have museums, they have galleries, they have art systems, if you will, that fund them. And, you know, the galleries profit off of the competition that he speaks of. You know, the art critics have something to write about, and you know, it gives the public something to come and circle around and watch and see how that's evolving. So I'm not averse at all to rigorous critique. And again, I'm distinguishing critique from criticism. You know, I think criticism has kind of an ill intent. It's because you don't like it. You're criticizing us because you don't like us. And fine, I'm sorry you don't. You know, you're missing out on a lot. I think that you just scratched the surface of the White Art Collective. And even if you knew every single musician and every poet and every filmmaker, every artist, and you still found like, you know what, this doesn't work for me, then have a nice day. You know, like no malice, you know, go your way. That's fine. But I don't think it's fair in the least to make these sorts of judgments without having truly gone into what it is we are and who we are, what we do. So I'll stop there and let him.
I agree. And that's why, you know, there's an interview I could pull up. Of the White Art Collective, where here they are. Let's see if I could find the moment where these leaders of this art collective are discussing their opinions
and like accurately assess who
Guest. We
see if I could find it. I don't know if I'll be able
feel like we don't have a right to exist anymore and we're losing it, you know, like our will to survive is like diminishing greatly. And there's
Anyway, I'm not going to start just looking through for the moment. You can watch this video if you want, but take my word for it. When they were asked what the point of the White Art Collective is, they said to promote European identity, to bring awareness to white genocide, things of that nature. And look, as much as people want these sorts of goals, people, everyone who's involved in these kinds of circles online have these goals in mind. Obviously, we want to promote white identity. We obviously want to do everything that we can to change the direction of society, to make things better for our people. But if you're going to be creating art, it can't seem like it's art that is made by like a political campaign, that's commissioned by politicians, or made with the explicit political aim in mind, because these political agendas come from our minds. They come from our intellects. Art has to come from the heart. It has to come from personal emotions. It has to be beautiful in and of itself, and it has to be, made with the utmost of skill and.
Okay, so I'll try to back up a bit here. I find it weird that I guess that he has these kind of like conditions. Art has to be this. And I don't agree with that. I just simply don't agree. I think that art is really the combination of the mind and heart, right? Body and soul, if you will. And so, and again, why is it that all kinds of other people can make this kind of art, but we can't? That seems unfair. It almost seems sort of like subtly, what's the word, ethnomasochistic in a way. I do agree with the notion that the aesthetics and the quality have to be as great as they can. And, if he's got his own standards and I have my own standards, everybody has their own standards. So you can judge it on your own. You're not going to like everything. There's a certain band I love, but I don't love every one of their songs. Do we sound like, does the White Art Collective sound like we're being funded by a political party? Ooh, I would argue no. We argue for a cause, or rather we express a cause. And here's the thing, we talk about art has to come from your heart and your experience. Well, what are we experiencing but daily abuse, demoralization, toxic media, policies against whites? I mean, I don't need to run down the laundry list of hell that we're living in. We're expressing that. That comes back to my point before about just regular folk music versus music about white identity and the white experience in our time. So these are different things, right? I could say, I don't know, maybe I'd try to use an example of, say, like, I don't know, maybe like Jamaican music or something. You might have a reggae song that's just about, I went fishing today and had some coconuts and, life is good, and I'm going surfing later, and this is life in Jamaica, versus a song that's about, guns and violence and surviving in the ghetto and the system and all. And they're both reggae songs, right? But one is political and the other is not, right? So where do we go? Let's just distinguish those things and understand what it is that we're talking about.
Beauty. And that has to be the number one thing. So later on, we could talk about my Imperium Poetica entry on my old defunct blog here, where I discuss art and poetry in particular. But let me just give you examples here. Let's do a listen. Let's have a listening to some music that I think is bad, and then some music that I think is good. Let's start with the good. We'll start with the good. Okay, here's Stan Rogers. Stan Rogers, McDonald on the Heights. Okay.
So quickly to jump ahead of that, it's a folk song about history. And that's awesome. That's totally awesome. And it actually crosses over both of those spheres I was talking about before. It is about white identity, but it's also folk music. You know, and what's folk music? The common life of the common man, that kind of thing. And so that is a good example. But we in the White Art Collective are not. Everybody has their own decision about how explicit they want to be about white identity, and some more than others. Some of our creators just write good songs and they just want to be part of our family. They're welcome. You see what I'm saying? So these are things that the audience or the public needs to know. So I'm just going to kind of jump ahead a little bit from this, and then we'll continue.
The aide-de-camp of General Brock during the War of 1812. And during this battle, I think it was around like Niagara Falls, who he was. I mean, basically this, if you look up McDonald on the Wikipedia page, it does in that person's shoes. And you get them to appreciate, and it really humanizes and personalizes a man from your country's history, and that gives you pride in the people who led these wars, the people who laid their lives on the line, the people who, you know, gave an example for you to follow. And so there's nothing explicit about this, but at the end of the day, if you're a Canadian and you're listening to this kind of song and you take it seriously, you end up with a greater appreciation of your country's history, of the men who helped form your country, of what it means to be Canadian. All these kinds of things you can take away from it, and it's just done in a beautiful way. That, I think, is one way to write a great song that is inherently nationalistic. You don't have to talk about things like it's okay to be white, or that we're going to reawaken our racial spirit, or anything like that. This is the type of thing that really gets you, that really would get normal people to have a greater appreciation of their nationality.
This is an excellent question right here. So this could be a debate right there. Again, that proves what I was saying about his aversion to being explicitly white and explicit white politics in music. That's his opinion, and that's his sense of things, and that's fine. I'm not, whatever. You can have that, But at the same time, I need to hear what's wrong with being explicitly white. I'm hearing, yes, of course, we would feel nationalistic or wholesome or enriched in some way to hear our history, but we're in a war right now. We're in a war right now for our survival, and that's what we're writing about. So there's a kind of, I don't know what to call it. It's almost like a personality type of people that just love history and philosophy and the past. And I definitely indulge in that. But as far as my music and my art, the trajectory is the future. And I think a lot of artists are like that as well. Certainly we're representing the experience of white genocide now. And who else is doing that? And who else has the courage to do that? So I think that is maybe a bit of a problem there that I have with this, is that I feel we should be recognized for that. Nobody's asking for a pat on the back. It's okay if you don't like our music here, there, wherever, you know, but we're going to continue doing and being who we are. So let's continue.
So, and that's really, I think, what it comes down to is when you think about yourself as a normie, you know, who's not involved in these kinds of uh, political circles online. Would it be more impactful to you to find out that somebody who you just think of as a great artist or musician has in their personal life certain political opinions that turn out to be nationalistic? Or would it be more impactful to just have somebody dump on you an explicitly nationalistic music album that is just filled to the brim with memes and cliches of it's okay to be white and we need to be proud of our racial spirit and all these kinds of things? I think it'd be way more impactful. And personally, I would rather find out that some great artist or some great musician who I never associated with traditionalism or nationalism or anything like that turned out to be that kind of a thing.
Okay, so this gets to the crux of the matter. This is something that we in the White Art Collective have discussed rigorously for a very long time, probably since the beginning, and that is the art versus politics. And I don't think it needs to be. They don't need to be against each other. I think this kind of boils down to a matter of sensibility. We have lots of fans, lots of people that love our content. And there, you know, our audience that comes to our shows regularly on DLive, etc. People who support us in our various YouTube channels and Twitter and etc. So it's a little subjective, but at the same time, it's a very, very critical and important point that he's bringing up. And I'll tell you, every single song I write and every piece of artwork I do, I struggle with this exact question. How do I balance them both? If I can make aesthetically pleasing art and music, and so can all of us, by the way, in the White Art Collective, how far do I want to go? So he says like cliches and memes. And I'm like, well, you know, memes are memes because they're popular. They go viral because people laugh or they agree or they think, whoa, that was based. You know, I can't believe that guy posted that. Holy cow. And we laugh. And it brings us together as a culture. So cliche is another thing. That's the thing that we as artists have to avoid. And I do agree with him strongly on that point. It's extremely hard to write music about or you know, make art about what we do, because the language and the ideas are somewhat limited. You know, we know who's driving white genocide. We know how the systems work. We know the apparatus of the media. We know the psychology of white liberals, etc. The whole package, right? So how many times can you repeat that topic over and over? You know, that it's definitely problematic. So I'm gonna, you know, I'll sort of give that to him in that regard. And also, I do say these things for my brothers and sisters in the White Art Collective, because the yoke we have, the responsibility that we have in choosing to fight this fight and do what we do with our arts, we have to be more informed. We need to be challenged. So that's why life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. You know, you get some critique, or rather you get criticism, you turn it into critique. And it's actually, you know, given us a lot of lively discussion amongst ourselves privately. And I hope that it will inspire us to say, you know what, I'm raising my standards. I want to address this in some manner with my work. Now, artists are tricky. Like there's been times where I've suggested, hey, why don't we do some kind of a theme, or let's have a mission, or let's talk about a manifesto. And not everybody is drawn to that concept, because we're in a sense, you know, we're artists, right? You want to write and draw and sing and write or whatever. You want to make art about your experience, because that's what you know, right? Right. So, and that's what they say, you should write what you know, share your experience. So on the other hand, you've got in the UK, Patriotic Alternative has a monthly theme where I forget what it is. I just saw it recently. The 14 words is the theme right now. So they're saying, okay, I don't know. I think it's a contest. I think there's some prize or something, but I don't quite know. Anyway, the point is that's another approach there, which could be, challenging and interesting when you, as an artist, when you stretch out of your comfort zone and you write something, on a theme, for example, that can help you grow. So I don't want to get too far off topic here. I think what I'll do is get back to the video.
On the side, and that their art just sort of stands on its own. So that's just one example. Now let's listen to an example of of what I consider quite bad music.
I'm going to skip this part, partly because it hurts, and partly because I feel that I feel that Apollonian Germ has a tremendous bias going into this. Secondly, we don't have millions of dollars of budget to make fancy videos with all kinds of hoopla in it. We're just people working out of our homes. You see what I'm saying? So it's, and not only that, when we choose to say put together videos with well, let's start off. Just being a musician alone doesn't mean you're a videographer, or something of that nature, right? So we're doing the best with what we have. And if you don't like it, then there's a million other videos and things that you can go do. So I would say, cut us a break a little bit there. There's that. And on the second hand, in defense of those of us who are kind of, putting together videos of our own with like stock footage, everybody does that. There's nothing, we're not alone in doing that. Everybody in our sphere does that. Apollonian Germ does that. So, maybe he doesn't like the aesthetics of it. Maybe he doesn't understand maybe the symbolism. That could be another aspect of it. But I feel like if you want to go into that part of the video, you can go watch it yourself. So I'll try to skip forward.
Is first of all, the lyrics have no they have no like quality of illustration of anything. They don't paint a picture that you can visualize in any way whatsoever. So
this is wildly wrong. It's insanely off the chart. I don't know where to go with this. I think that his bias against the music is so strong that he can't see through his own taste or his own bias. I don't need to say this, but I guess I have to say it, I suppose, is that, Hireth is one of the shining stars among us in the White Art Collective. Her work is profound. It's hauntingly beautiful. I'll be honest with you. I sometimes cannot listen to her music because it hurts me. It makes me feel so deeply that it's like I have to stop. I'm choking up. And so for him to be so ham-fisted about this, is that right there is where I'm like, okay, I lost you. I felt like you were acting in good faith. And then for you to be holding up aesthetics and beauty are the most important thing of art and completely miss the essence of Hiraeth and her poetry, her music, then I'm kind of like, okay, I don't really think you're qualified to critique this work. Granted, we're in the, aesthetics is not, it's not a math, right? It's not a science. There are sort of principles of art and music that you can use as a guide to judge things, but I'm really sort of like, okay, wow, dude, you just lost 100 points, So let's try to skip forward to some more content to talk about.
Well, that's the first problem with the lyrics. There's no like personality to them. There's more. But let's go back to a good example. This, I think, is a great example of a song that is just a good song. But if you're thinking about it from our perspective, you realize, oh, this is also a nationalistic song. This is also a song that promotes pride in one's nation and even in one's local town and one's heritage. It's a town I loved so well.
So there you have it. I believe that what he just said about it's nationalistic, it promotes our love of our heritage, etc., versus music about white identity. So I really think it's pretty clear his position on that. He's welcome to his position on that. He has his own point of view. He's got some reason to back it up, but where he's failing in his argument is he's not digging really deep into our side and our content, which would take weeks. There's a lot of content on here. So I would say that if you're going to publicly go out and critique the White Art Collective or any group, put a little more time into looking through the material. That's what it is. We all make mistakes. I'm not going to apologize for them, but I at the same time say, like, this is just if you want to, be straight and harsh and raw and true, that's what's going on right now. Is that I think that you need to give the White Art Collective a second chance. I would say check it out. Go to whiteartcollective.com, click around, give yourself some time to look into it. If you cannot sort of breach the limitations of thinking that, our music in our sphere must be folk music or nationalistic and not exclusively white, then you're not going to like the White Art Collective. And that goes for anybody, So, and I'm fine with that. I'm like, that's fair enough. But you do kind of have to do a lot more research. It kind of goes back to me saying, if I'm going to go see a jazz concert and I don't know anything about jazz, then maybe I should learn some music theory or listen to some performers or talk to musicians so that I understand, like, what is this jazz thing all about, right? We don't all know everything that we're talking about. We have to put the effort in. So that's the thing. And I'm not saying any of this out of malice. Again, I love and adore the White Art Collective. My allegiance is with them. They are my friends and my comrades, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of that. I believe we're making history. I believe that history will look back on us and say, those were the people that did something and were courageous enough to do something, and that it is, after all, okay to be white. So let's move on a little bit more. His whole show is not all on the White Art Collective, so we'll just hopefully try to wrap this up.
Abstract statements don't. Okay, you guys. Okay, you guys get it. We're not going to listen to the whole song, but go and listen to the song if you've never heard it before. It talks about his experience in a town where he grew up. It gives specific memories, specific examples of why he loves the town, of why it's a beautiful town. And then it talks about how, as he got older, the town changed and how it did not change for the better. And it was forced to change. And it makes him sad. And at the end, he talks about how they're going to persevere regardless. So there's all of this, you know, so many evocative things that come out of the song where you're listening and you can really picture it in your mind. And it makes you feel like if you were there, if this was happening to you, you would feel strongly about it too. And, you know, it's the type of thing that I think music needs. Somebody in the chat, Levin T, says, I don't think it has to be personal. In my opinion, best music was made in dedication to gods and transcendent values. Personal music has its place, but it's not the best. Can you link me a specific song that you think is specifically about gods and transcendent values? I'd like to listen to it because I don't know if I've ever heard music that I could say is specifically like about a song about a transcendent value. Because the best way to communicate values, this is what I'm trying to get across here, is the best way to communicate your values is by showing an example, showing something, a personal experience that you had, a memory that you have, a story from history, something that you can relate to, that makes it real, that makes it concrete, that doesn't.
Is that not what we are doing in the White Art Collective? So I'm reading extremely excellent comments in the comment section. And I want to say, like, people are making more intelligent reviews than I am, actually. So I feel kind of like, I would like to get some of that out there. But again, this is just me. It is what it is. All I'm trying to do really here is like pull out the gold, like push aside the dirt and take the gold. Like, what can I learn from this? What can we learn from this? Maybe let's just kind of open our minds and let's brainstorm a little bit. There's probably very many people who agree with AG and his perspective on this. Fine. There's a lot of normies who are afraid to do or say or think or be near anything explicitly white. So maybe we should consider that and say, okay, what could we do that could help to, how can we have our cake and eat it too? How can we, express our arts in a way that wakens up a white racial conscious globally, for the purpose of preserving the West, etc., in a way that is exciting and engaging. Maybe we should be more clever. Maybe we should be more subtle. I think we are already, to be quite honest with you, but not always, right? There's times when, Nullis has this great poem that punches you in the teeth. It's really, it's one of those, like, don't read it with children around, and it's meant to slam you in the head and say, like, I'm not taking this abuse anymore. And then you have like these, like the music of Saint Friendship, which is a combination of sexual and spiritual, and it takes you to a whole other world. And it embodies something of our experience in it, in a subtle interpretive way. I would argue that a lot of Hyrith's music does exactly the same thing in a sophisticated yet simple way. So, I really would like to take up a torch about Hyrith. Her music is exemplary, but I don't want to make the whole show about that. It does grind my gears a bit. Again, so let's try to take a look at this event and say, what can we learn from it? Let's not have a knee-jerk reaction. I know not everybody's going to like this. I recognize your feelings on that. That's fine. But I guess I'm just trying to take maybe the art teacher role here and say, what can we learn from this? It's kind of a fatherly role from it. And I do invite AG onto American Zarathustra. Like I said, I don't have any malice. I'm working through this. I think that if he comes on my show in good faith and wants to have a further discussion about what exactly is wrong with making white explicit music, and or what could we do to make it more effective, would be fabulous. The doors are wide open. Like I said, I've been following his content for over a year. And there you go. And if you look at our show with Nullis, Imperium Art, we have everybody on. We've got Richard Spencer. We've got Dave Martell. We've got Tyler Hamilton, Joel Davis. We've got all kinds of great minds with strong opinions and these things, and we love it. We engage in it. It's exciting. I find it exciting. So the door is wide open. It's a white flag. There's I'm not looking to fight or whatever. That's silly. That's not. I wouldn't waste my time honestly on fighting. So yeah, there's that. Let's try to. I'm going to try to wrap this up. This is going a bit long.
Doesn't turn it into just some kind of contrived abstract statement, because those the abstract statements don't evoke emotion, and music is meant to be emotional. Music is meant to evoke feelings within you. Atherin says, to be fair, you are comparing a young girl to Luke Kelly. Yeah, well, I'm not comparing her in particular, because we'll look at other music. I don't want to pick on High Wrath in particular. Let's look at it. All right, so we've seen
High Wrath. Ouch. Not knowing how to pronounce her name right off the bat kind of says I didn't do my research. I'm sorry. So let's
two examples now of what I think are good. Let's look at another example of what I think is not good. This is what you should not do with music. This song is called "It's Okay to Be White," and it's from the White Art Collective's mixtape, Volume 1. Oops.
Sunbeams rest in suspension like heavenly flakes, birthing at the surface of her tender, pale skin. The sound of our children's voices rings the air. The little rumble caused by their running reverberates my spine. It's okay to be white. It's okay to be white. My wife rises to dance with me. We go together in the light. The little ones surround us below, singing out their heart's delight. And out in the garden, I've been laboring.
And out in the garden, I've been laboring. No. That sounds like something that somebody who's never been working out in the garden would say. Out in the garden, I've been laboring.
The fragrance of the grass
playing with the garden hose.
Nothing like a day of rest well earned. It's okay to be right.
Okay, you guys get it. Like people.
So that was very mocking. I feel like that's kind of like a high school mentality to take somebody's music and go out there in public and just mock it. It doesn't make him look very good, to behave like that. And I've honestly never seen him behave like that. So I'm really disappointed. I think, again, seeing through the veil of bias of, do I like this kind of music? That's one aspect of this. The other aspect is, he feels that it's contrived to make music about being white. Now, it's okay to be white is a meme in our culture that people get in severe trouble for. That if you're caught posting putting it on a sticker somewhere, a poster somewhere, people lose their jobs, and there's all kinds of trouble that goes with that. And yet this songwriter is saying it in a very pure and innocent way. So this is what I mean about being vulnerable as an artist. You're putting your heart out there. He's to say something that you're not allowed to say, which is not in any way harmful to anybody else. And then to have someone plunge a knife into that heart is it's rough, And I don't like all kinds of music. I'm not sure I like every song in the White Art Collective, but that's a matter of taste. You see where I'm going? Where it's like, I think this type of criticism is counterproductive. We're not, how do I say? We're not this kind of like, we're not statues. We're living beings. We're people. We don't live in history. We live now, and we're trying to make a better future. And we're doing it with the tools and abilities that we have. We're artists, we're, think about it. Our political sphere is very atomized, and you've got like too much testosterone on this side, and you've got a lot of military people on that side, and there's a lot of anger, and it's sort of imploding. What other force but the White Art Collective is positive and putting out like positive vibes? Well, Jason Kuna, No White Guild, Jared George, fantastic. I could say things like the White People's Quarterly. There are other spheres and people working to do positive things, but this again is like you lost some more points on that approach. So let me try to continue.
People have said somebody said there's where did it go? Where did your comment go? I like the message, but there is no simile or poetry, he says. Privata says, please make it stop. It's over. The pain is over. And look, like once again, I feel the urge to repeat. Like, I'm sure that I agree with these guys when it comes to the political stuff, but you can't be trying to make music that is specifically like based on a meme, on the "it's okay to be white" meme. I mean, I'm not a fan of the music itself. I'm not a fan of the style of music. I prefer music that's made with real instruments, and that shows that you have skill in the production of music. So I'm not I mean, some electronic music I do enjoy, like the video that I made with Aphex Twin in it. But this is like trying too hard to be dancey and poppy, and it really forces this political message down. There's in the verses where he's trying to like create imagery, talking about laboring in the garden and playing with the garden hose. it doesn't inspire any sort of feeling. It doesn't get me to think about it, and it's not done in a way that is linguistically adept. It doesn't feel like this person has like a strong command of the English language, and that he can sort of forge these words together into a poetic, an interesting and poetic lyric. So, I mean, I wish I could pull up the lyrics of it, but
So there's that. When he mentioned the music of Aphex Twin, does anybody know that band in the chat? It's not really a band. It's a dude who makes extremely hardcore techno music that's very, like, if you look up the song Come to Daddy, or there's other ones. They're very, very negative. They're really angry and degenerate. And I'm like, if that's your measurement of what good music is, then of course you'd have that song would, like, you'd hate it. So it's radically different as far as music. And he just contradicted himself, because he says he likes music with, quote, real instruments, but yet Aphex Twin is all techno. So I'm just throwing those things out. I think this is becoming one of those, like, snarky, let's all gather around and act like high school students and critique something we don't like. It's human. I've done it. We all do it sometimes. I wouldn't do it in public, and I definitely would not do it to the White Art Collective, because that's, for one, punching right. And I'm just distinguishing these things. You have to separate your artistic bias from something else. At the same time, I will say, yes, you're right. We need to continue to grow. We need to critique ourselves harder. We need to work harder. The question of how explicit you are in your messaging, like singing a song, "It's okay to be white," that's, pushing the message right down your throat. But at the same time, if you know the culture and you know the memes, you know the history of what we're talking about, it actually reverberates. So everybody's going to experience that differently. And therefore, no one person kind of has, like, I'm the king of art criticism. I say what goes. You're welcome to share your thoughts and make your case, but and another aspect of it is that artists are growing, and we're not, like, complete. It's like, if I don't know how to say that, but if we all had to wait until we were perfect masters of our art to publish our art, there wouldn't be much art out there. It's like you make a song, you put it out, and then you make another, and you put it out, and you grow and you grow and you grow. So I have more respect for people who have the courage to do that, to put their heart out there, to be vulnerable to this kind of critique, and then keep going. So, and again, I'm just sort of trying to call it as I see it. So let's try to finish up.
you get what I'm saying. That it's all about, lines are about, we need to show them the truth. We need to show them what's inside ourselves. We need to hold the lines. Like, there's all kinds of cliched statements like this that it just feels so contrived. It doesn't feel like it's coming from a personal experience or personal emotion, or something that really is deeply and profoundly evocative and emotional for people. It's coming from this, like, this desire to create music that's going to inspire people to be political. It really feels like, and I listened to this whole mixtape the whole way through before making this stream. I did it yesterday, and it really felt like the type of thing that, like, a political campaign would produce.
So this is a good question. What are we doing in the Wet Art Collective? What am I doing? Let me ask myself that question. I'm the only one who answers to my music, right? I have to have. So am I trying to make people become political through my music? Yes, I am. Am I ashamed of that? No. Do I do it well? I think I do. And I think that for some people, though, that can be a turnoff. We do know that, normies are not ready. They have to be gradually red pilled. But that's why I said earlier, my music is for our audience within our sphere, people who are white pilled, people who want to celebrate our culture, people who are already political. A lot of people I know in the audience, they have shows, or they're on shows, or they go to shows when I like YouTube shows and stuff. I don't get why we're not allowed to do that. And I think that where he's right and where I kind of join him or concede in some way is that we have to ride this balance between art and politics. It's a tricky situation. It's a very hard tightrope to walk, and you're not gonna please everybody. And if you were an artist and you tried to please everybody, then you're gonna die. Like, you're gonna implode. You just can't do that. But this notion that it's not coming from personal experience and it's not coming from our feelings is way, way, way off. It's just totally way off. It's not appealing to his feelings. It's not appealing to maybe his personal experience. And so that's, I believe, where the disconnect is. I do think that there's some valid critiques here, which I've already mentioned several times. So I think, again, it's like separating the wheat from the chaff and saying, okay, I think artists in our sphere, not just the White Art Collective, but all artists in our sphere, in the right wing in general, we have to struggle with these questions, and it's good that he brought it up. I'm happy that he made this video. I'm not happy about the snarky, insulting stuff. I'm not happy about him not really kind of maybe doing deeper research. But at the same time, I accept the fact that this isn't for him. It's not for him. It just doesn't jive with him, and that's okay. It's like, this is reality, right? I mean, you say tomato and I say tomato, but let's see if we can keep going here. I'm getting a little tired of this. I don't know how much more, because if it's just sort of repeating the same point over and over, I think I'll wrap it up, but let me run a little bit farther.
It somehow feels like corporate in that sense. So someone who's related to this, someone who I'm not going to be too hard on, is Jared George. He's the Great Order. His moniker is the Great Order. And here's an example of music that I won't be as harsh about. I don't like the music. I'm not a fan of this music. I won't like crank this as I'm driving down the street in my car radio, but at least this is a step up. This is a little better because it's not. It doesn't feel as contrived. Even though this is quite explicitly political, by the way. Look at the music video is showing news articles, and it's going to show other, video clips and stuff that's explicitly political. And in a sense, it is in a similar camp to the other political music that's coming out of the White Art Collective. But something about it, maybe it's in the fact that the lyrics aren't as explicit, that he's a bit better of a poet. He's a bit more subtle with his word choices. But another problem with this is it still sort of sounds like half of the music is coming out of GarageBand, like almost like MIDI file like music samples. I don't know, but that's just kind of how it sounds. It doesn't sound like every instrument is played live in the studio.
They come to your place and don't ask for permission. They are graceful in their discontent. You haven't seen their faces yet, but they love to sneak surprise. They'll blame it on the news, it's lies. They'll say you can't trust history yet. They're all here to aid and abet. I'm not afraid at all. They're not gonna take what's in us. They think they got us all. You're not gonna change what's in us.
See, it's a step up because instead of saying they're not going to take our great white racial spirit or anything like that, he says they're not going to take what's in us. Okay, it's subtle, it's general. You get to project into that your personal experience, your personal feelings. So
I feel there's something to say here. Subtle versus explicit in art. There's they're essentially two choices. You know, when I write a song or do a work of art, I can just say straight out, bang, you know, these are the people who control the world. Or I could say, do you know who controls the world? Have you looked, you know, and then like allude to it. So, you know, punk rock hits you over the head, you know, with its message. It's extremely political. It says everything unabashedly. Whereas, say, you know, I don't know, maybe folk rock or country is maybe more subtle and more emotional and more kind of dreamy in some way, you know. So this becomes an aesthetic value or an aesthetic choice, and even an aesthetic bias, right? And it's that thing that we've been talking about throughout this show: art versus politics, or subtlety versus being explicit. I think it's case by case for me. Again, this show is just my point of view. I am not officially representing the White Art Collective. I have my allegiance with them. I'm a member of them, but that's what we're talking about here. That is what he is responding to. And we all have our own kind of aesthetic values, I don't know, opinions is the right word, but sensibilities, aesthetic sensibilities.
Snakes are chasing off their tails as leeches are increasing sounds. It's hard to tell who loves for real when everything's about the deal.
And there's a bit better, he has a better sense of rhythm, I think, and a better sense of poetic rhythm with his word choices. He's better at rhyming. You know, there's things about his music that I do like, and I won't be as harsh on him. So just to show you, I'm not a total hater. But so let's talk about, if this is bad, if most of this stuff is bad from the White Art Collective, what do I consider good art? Well, I'm just going to read this for you. This is from my defunct blog that I never post on anymore. A brief generalization of modern poetry. So what I say here about poetry, I think, is it relates to music. It relates to just about any other artistic endeavor, because Well, you'll see. Let's just start reading it. When it comes to poetry and art in general, we live in a post-apocalyptic world. All of the old traditions and values have been so thoroughly destroyed and rejected that only the ancient ruins of the past remain, and nobody seems to remember the old style. This downgoing of traditional Western poetry can be traced back as far as Walt Whitman, but the process accelerated exponentially in the 20th century. It only took about 100 years to complete that decline into absolute egalitarianism, nihilism, and despair of modernists and modern literary critics, which represented the absolute low point of Western culture. The world we live in today is a ruin of their making. What began with Whitman and culminated in the mid-20th century was a complete reversal of the aesthetic values held by Europeans since prehistoric times. Since Homer's epics, the very foundations of Western literature, the value placed in cleverness, in vivid description, the virtues of life, mastery over language, perfection of the crafts of rhyme, meter, alliteration, and other standards of excellence were upheld by poets and authors as obligatory honors one must pay to the muses to produce a great work. This is my main point here. Cleverness, vivid description, virtues of life, mastery over language, the perfection of the craft of rhyme, meter, alliteration. These are the things that are lacking in something like the White Art Collective's music. Okay, it doesn't seem like their art is out there in order to show that they are great artists, that they are great craftsmen, that they know that they're masters of language, that they do great things with the language itself, with the music itself. That is secondary, if it's even a concern to them at all, to creating something that they could push out there and say that this is pro-white. That is what I feel about their music. And that's the problem, I think, ultimately. They need to have, these people need to do something that is undeniably beautiful and shows that they have a strong command over their lyrical poetry, over the music itself, the instruments that they're playing. Do something that nobody could deny is great. Don't just pump out some kind of song that you can say is pro-white just because it's pro-white. Do something that really evokes emotion. I mean, it's the same reason why I can read poems or listen to music that was created by Christians, even though I have really no love for Christianity. And yet, when I hear a beautiful Christian song or read a beautiful poem written by a Christian, the fact that they have created something that is beautiful, where they show that they have a command over language, where they show that they have a great sense or mastery of musical beauty, that I just can't deny it then. And I'd say, okay, this is a great song, or this is a great poem, even though it's about, it's written by a Christian about Christian values. So, continuing. Now, pathological egalitarianism prevails.
So I think that's pretty much the takeaway. I'm sort of at a point right now where I'm kind of like, what's the point of this whole thing? Let's kind of get down to the bottom line. And I think he clarified that, a moment ago, just talking about making great art. I would challenge him to make great art. I would say, join us, write great songs, write great poetry, challenge us, be the competition that we need. Make better songs, make better poetry. that serve our community. Show us the right way to do it, and we'll compete with you. And then everybody wins. You see what I'm saying? Again, life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So I'm always trying to take a positive approach, even when someone is insulting or hurtful in some way or other. In general, I don't think he has his heart in the wrong place. And anyway, I don't want to repeat myself on points I've made earlier, but my feeling here is I think I'm going to wrap up the show. This is going on pretty long, and I want to thank everybody for joining me in the chat as well. I hope I'm not cutting him off too soon, that there's any more that he has to say, but I think we all pretty much got his point. And I think now is the question of, well, what do we do with this knowledge? What do we do? Now, that's not to say we haven't been struggling with this question since day one, though. And I think that if AG looks at the full breadth of the work that we put out, he'll see that. You know, it's just a matter of time, per se. But I feel that his taste in music is too, I don't want to say it's too biased, because everybody has biases, but it seems to be that he doesn't kind of care for this kind of music. And I mean, but that doesn't make sense either, because we have all kinds of music, right? You know, Mamas and the Pepes, my music, Donald Kent, Modernity Leave, you know, Lilo and John. I mean, wow, we're all over the place. And so I think it kind of boils down to, you know, aesthetics is an important thing, and then the question of messaging. So I guess what I want to say is kind of end on a positive here and say, you know, I appreciate the whatever value that we can get from this. I commend and I challenge my friends and comrades in the White Art Collective to continue growing. I don't think we should be sort of shot down in any way by this, especially Hireth. But I think that, you know, let the air clear a little bit, and let's just continue doing what we do. And then, like I said, maybe AG should make more music, make more poetry, demonstrate through his actions what good art should be that is helpful to our sphere. Now, that might not work at all, because he seems to be very, very much in the subtlety camp, in the kind of, let's just talk about nationalism, let's not talk about being white camp. And that's a camp, you know, I mean, there's some legitimacy to that. It's not what we choose to do. Being in the white identity movement, we're already nationalists. It's kind of a circle within a circle. And our position is that if we don't recognize explicitly the being white as a demographic, then we're going to lose in some way. And that's why we do what we do. If we're vague about it and da-da-da, I think that the vagueness and the, what's the word? Aversion to talking about our race, racial identity, that in itself, that to me seems kind of like hints of leftism. That it's sort of like you're still in the matrix if you can't come straight out. And now I can't say that directly to him, because I don't think he talks very, very much about whiteness. You know, I think he's more about philosophy. And so, like, you know, he's not really in our sphere in the regard that, you know, white identity politics as a culture and a sphere online, it's very definitely a thing, right? And our circles overlap. We have the same goals, but we have different paths to get there, you know? So I find all this very fascinating and invigorating. So once again, I want to invite AG on the show, American Zarathustra, or even better, Imperium Art. I think that him and Nullis would have extremely lively conversation, you know, and that would be exciting, you know. Are you ready to rumble? No, I'm kidding. Anyway, I love you guys, and I want to just spread love for everybody in our sphere. Let's keep it real. To the artists in the White Art Collective, This is just more rocket fuel for us. This is just more inspiration for us. You know, anybody can say anything about anything. We all have opinions and stuff, but I'm always trying to isolate, well, what are the facts? What can be measurable? What can we take away from it? I'm not in the kind of like I'll say like in our sphere, you've got people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. And I feel like the younger people are, the more they lean towards the snarkiness and the attacking of other people and the infighting. I'm the opposite of that. Not that I'm 100 years old, but I care about the mission. The mission comes first. And so if we can take critique and utilize it as fuel for our benefit, let's do that. Okay. So I'm afraid I'm cutting this too short, but I don't like to have shows that are like extremely long. Anyway, God bless you guys. Have yourself a wonderful day. Please leave comments below. We can continue this discussion, below this video or even online, Twitter or wherever. It's an important discussion. It's vital to the White Art Collective and everything that we do. And I especially want to thank AG for putting that stuff out there. Even though I have my critiques of his critique, it's all part of the mix and everybody benefits in the end. All right, take care.